Good evening, everyone. This is Mr. Becker, and I'm going to do my example presentation for you in just a minute for Flannery O'Connor and for the two pieces of writing that were in the textbook. I'm going to do that in a moment, and I'll time this too. Before I begin, allow me to say that Summer's got a great one that I'm going to send you as well. So there's two different versions of presentations you can keep in mind. And I don't know, like I said, I believe both of the presentations you'll see, I know mine and Summers does, cover the information that you needed to cover when you were given the instructions for the presentation. So without further ado, or other words that mean goodbye in other languages, let's begin the presentation about Flannery O'Connor. I know it's exciting to see my face slide across the screen there. So we're talking about Flannery O'Connor. And the two stories that we had to do for this week. This is a picture of Flannery O'Connor, and you're going to see a bunch of different images. I think pictures of her matter, and I would like to point these out as we go through the presentation. Perfectly normal-looking individual. I will say, this is a little bit ahead of what I'll talk about. She died at 39. She didn't live very long. And so this is one of the later pictures, and I think she's an attractive woman. This is a painting of her. She is a Southern author. That is a genre. That is a style of writing. And so you've already read one. All of you, I believe Garrett's read it, and Lila I can't speak of, but if you've read To Kill a Mockingbird, Harper Lee is a Southern author. That is actually a genre of literature, and there's a few different ways to refer to that genre. But Southern literature is one of them, and that's what we'll use it for the purposes of this presentation. So when you call it a genre, you're typically including family and religion as two of the big pieces of what a piece of Southern writing is. And of course, To Kill a Mockingbird has that. You'll remember, of course, that we have Scout and her brother, her father Atticus, who's one of the biggest characters in all of American literature. Family matters, and religion's there too. And family and religion definitely play a role in both of these stories by Flannery O'Connor. So first, some things about her as I move my head. She didn't mind making fun of herself, and I'll come back to a couple pictures of her with that in a minute. The word or the phrase is self-deprecating, so she didn't think too highly of herself, at least when it came to how she looked and things going on in her life, and that kind of matters. She was very well educated. She went from high school to college and excelled at both. She was a good student, unquestionably. She spent time with other contemporary artists. That means people that were writers and performing other pieces of, you call them, whether they're literature or music. She spent time with people that, for her time, were people that were important. I don't really know that there's anybody that we have read, certainly not in our class. The closest thing I could think of was knowing that we've read the Odyssey before, at least back in sophomore year. One of the earlier and very good translations of the Odyssey and the Iliad were by I think it's Robert Fitzgerald, and she ended up living with Fitzgerald and his wife at their house because they were friends. So she spent time with them because she found it something that she could write while she was there. She was a disabled adult. I said she died at 39, and she was diagnosed with it back then, but we understand it as lupus today, which is an autoimmune disorder where basically your body starts to fight itself, starts to, you wither away. You really have difficulties with walking, and in fact, you'll see some pictures here where she's got her arms in supports they're like crutches, but kind of not quite, as she's walking around, almost like canes. And it did kill her, but sadly, perhaps the worst thing about it is she knew she was dying, and it took a lot away from her as she was going. And religion, another O'Connor thing, religion's very important in her life and her work as well. For keeping track, it's about 3.5 minutes into the presentation so far. So why I chose her, what I hope you take from it all. First of all, I didn't choose her. You did. I left one extra with all the students we had, and it just so happened that it was Flannery O'Connor, which is fine. I think she's great. I did pick this pile of authors. I think she's dark. She's emotional. In other words, there's a lot of emotion in the stories, not that she's emotional. And the characters and situations are complex and they are deadly. So they're not simple situations. Something might appear simple, but it becomes much more complex. She's also a rare bridge between Christianity and Catholicism. Catholicism, as you know, we've talked about it sometimes. That's the religion that I follow, that I practice, and we talked about this at length with the Inferno. Oftentimes, Christianity, all the different types of Christianity, meaning whether they're Baptist, Methodist, and so on, Lutheran, they stand apart from Catholicism. Flannery O'Connor put them all in the same pile. She was a practicing and devout Catholic. And you'll see a little bit of that in her story, but she takes it and really makes it so that what is a Catholic ideal is a Christian ideal, and those two things are not always the same. Finally, I think the biggest thing to take out of our stories is that choices matter. What choices you make have great import for what will happen to you. And she's telling us to be mindful, to be aware of that as we're reading her stories. To pick up from that last point there, that choices matter, what choices get made in A Good Man is Hard to Find? What are the consequences of these choices? Grandma drives a lot of it. By the way, this is a Flannery O'Connor picture. This is not like some generic grandma. Again, she only lived to 39, so she's not very old in this picture. So what are the consequences of these choices? And at the end, what has become of the grandmother? So To Kill a Mockingbird talks about this Southern ideal as beautiful women, well dressed in elaborate outfits and looking as though they're going to go to a gown or to a ball rather, wearing gowns. The last view of Grandma, and the quote is here on the slide, but of course it's in the book. It's right at the end of the story, is that she half sat and half lay in a puddle of blood with her legs crossed under her like a child's, and her face smiling up at the cloudless sky. And to me, I take that as a connection as she's staring, she's looking up into heaven. She's got a great big smile on her face, but it isn't really a happy ending by any means. And of course, I know you know that if you've read the story. So why is, what is with this smile? What is the author trying to say about looking to heaven after all this is done? This is another picture of Flannery O'Connor with those braces I talked about before. What does this say about who she is? What does this say about religion and or God if she's looking up to the skies as she's lying there dead? And then, of course, right after that, there's a line, she would have been a good woman, as the Misfit says. She'd have been a good woman if it had been somebody there to shoot her every minute of her life. Obviously, and this is a woman author, that's not a great thing to say about women in general. Although, are we talking about her age? Are we talking about the family? Are we talking about that she's older? What is the reason for it? But it's definitely not flattering, no matter what. And to move quickly now, so choices matter. This is the second story we have. Whose choices? One difference here is that we have two people who we see do bad things, and then the author said in the months leading up to her death, there's lots of blame in this story to go around. So it's not like there's anybody that's a good person, and there's lots of people that do bad things. And you could even argue she hates everybody. She actually said, as she was older, nearly about to die, the blacks, she's talking, they should rise, but on their own side of the fence. Doesn't age well nowadays. So everyone shares blame. Everyone wins. So quickly to talk about, again, another picture of hers, there's humor in her writing too. Remember I said she doesn't take herself too seriously. So in our second story, she says something like, I reckon it might could. This is, I read it like this kind of hillbilly sort of voice. I reckon it might could, but I know for a fact my apartment couldn't get no hotter. And she talks about the woman with the protruding teeth. She herself had protruding teeth. And I find in some of the stuff she's written, she puts herself or someone like herself in her stories. I don't know if it's just to amuse herself. Of course, she's passed away, and I couldn't find anything that says that she does that on purpose. But I don't think she's racist. I do think the mother is portrayed as a dummy, which is what kills her. And the description of the woman that kills her, too, is not innocent. And her description says she's not innocent. So to really hustle here, literary devices we see symbolism in the names of people. There's foreshadowing throughout A Good Man is Hard to Find. You see what's happening ahead of time when she says, hey, let's, Florida, and then they end up going to a different place, and she walks them right into the arms of this killer. She's another good woman. author, which is always great to read about. And then the idea that choices matter, literally have life or death consequences. And this slide or this picture right here is a picture of her, and she liked birds, she collected birds, kind of. And so there's a lot. This is I don't think it's a great piece of art, but this is a picture of her with one of her beloved birds. And as we finish up here, here's a picture of her and one of the peacocks that she had that she raised. There's actually, it's covering this, but there's two of them here. You can see that she's wearing the braces. So later on in life, this is something she found a lot of joy in, spending time with birds. Not a lot of personal connections in her life besides her family. So thank you for listening. Thank you for paying attention. And I will upload this to you all in a little bit.